All right, well, this is a little bit awkward. I'm bringing out the face cam here. I don't know. I think it's a better viewing experience with the face cam. Maybe, maybe not. I know most people, don't do face cams, but we're going to be doing the February update for the 2024 presidential election. I want to preface this before I even get into the polling data. These are just for entertainment. The idea that it matters, the general election, who's winning in February, early February, these are meaningless. It's just for fun. The thing I will say, what you want to pay attention to, is the Biden approval rating, and we will be looking at that. But just a few things I want to point out. One of the things that I really like that they show is this day in history. So you can see back in 2020 in February, you did have Joe Biden sitting plus 5.5 in terms of popular vote. You compare that to today, it's Trump plus 1.5, almost 2, and that's heavily influenced by a poll that is skewed from Quinnipiac, who is just an absurdly liberal pollster. We had the exact same issues with Quinnipiac back in 2020. They're still using them, and they're skewing the data, saying Biden is up 6 in a general election. At this point, it's impossible based on Biden's approval rating. He's not winning the general election right now based on his approval rating by 6 points. It would be completely unheard of. And Quinnipiac's been liberal forever, but they skew the overall data, unfortunately. You can see February back in 2016, Hillary Clinton sitting plus 3.5. This is just popular vote again. And recent numbers outside of that skewed poll, you've seen CNN come out with a poll, Trump plus 4, Trump plus 1 from Yahoo, Emerson. I mean, these are very close numbers, but the general consensus is, that one poll is really skewing things and bringing Biden up significantly to where it's almost within 2. And the other major thing I'll look at, I mean, I could look at states and things like that, but just the one other thing I would say to look at is the Biden approval rating. And recently, you don't want to say it's official. Well, I was going to say, give it another week or two. Maybe Biden's approval rating is getting better. I speculated that Biden's approval rating would get better just because we're coming up in the election. Liberals are going to galvanize around Biden once they realize he's the choice. I saw he was out campaigning in a swing state. Maybe it'll still be Michelle Obama. I don't know. But at this point, you can see Biden's approval rating getting slightly better, mainly based off this Emerson poll, only -4. Also a recent one, -10. But then you also do have, it's just, for Biden, I don't think he's had a positive. This is just horrific. There's a positive one back about 7 or 8 months ago. All right, so let's get to the actual. So I did include all of the candidates, the whole band here. It is RFK Jr., the Independent, Cornel West, and Jill Stein of the Green Party. And I will also be color coding this officially with darker shades, lighter shades, things like that. Normally, I always start off on the West Coast. It just feels better to start off on the West Coast. So with Washington and Oregon, maybe you could turn this to a touch shade lighter of blue, but I just don't see any way Biden loses either of these states. Same thing with California. If it's the darkest shade, I am calling it a virtual lock. Now, technically, if there's some crazy crisis, maybe, because you got a lot of rural people in these states that are conservative, but generally it's just, the people in the major cities with all the crime, they're the ones voting liberal, and they're really going to influence those states. Hawaii, obviously liberal as well. And then we will give Trump all of his Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Idaho, Alaska. Alaska took a while to call back in 2020. Also, you do have Utah. Colorado is an interesting one. I've seen some polls out of Colorado that only have Biden up 6 or 7. I'm going to move it a little bit lighter of a shade, but certainly I expect Biden to win that. New Mexico, Biden's going to win. These are the two big swing states out west. We'll do those later. Texas, I think it's going to be Trump very easily. It takes a lot to swing the demographics in Texas, and the whole idea that, Texas is turning left because you got people migrating from California. It doesn't happen that quickly. Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. I think Trump takes every district in Nebraska. Believe it or not, the only district he lost in Nebraska was by about 5 or 6 points, and I think he ends up winning that. You could argue that Biden should win one. I don't know. We'll put it at a really light shade there in terms of that. Moving on to Minnesota, I think Biden wins Minnesota. I'm going to put it at slightly a lighter shade, similar to Colorado. Actually, I think Minnesota is even more in play than Colorado. A few polls suggesting Biden's up 4 or 5 points in those states. Iowa is not a swing state anymore. It was kind of back in 2016, but 2020 it really wasn't. In 2024, certainly is not. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana. Indiana is always like the first state that gets called. Illinois, of course, going to Biden. Georgia will come back to. South Carolina, I'm going to move it a touch because I don't think Trump's going to blow out Biden in South Carolina, but I do have Trump winning that state. These are the big ones for the conservatives. Florida, I'm not going to have a lock for the right, but based off of the numbers we've seen with DeSantis, he swung that state completely. That's 30 electoral votes. You don't have to fight for those anymore if you are. I'm actually going to move it a little bit darker just because I think it's almost a lock. And same thing with Ohio. Ohio's in a very similar spot. You do have West Virginia. Virginia, I just can't. I'm going to make it a darker shade, but I think Biden's winning Virginia. I'd have to see a big shift in terms of demographics there. New York, there's some funny polls out of New York, but it's not going to happen. All these dimple states, they're all very liberal outside of New Hampshire. So we'll do all of them like that. And then for Maine, Maine is a swing state. I guess we'll come back to Maine later. So this is what it looks like. At least this is what I'm seeing right now, as long as I didn't miss anything. So you've got your major swing states. This is what the election always comes down to nowadays. And you're looking at Nevada, you're looking at Arizona. I think they're conservative states. It's crazy because I always thought Arizona was a conservative state. Trump narrowly lost it in 2020. But the recent polling we've seen, Nevada is actually, with Trump up by like 7 or 8 points. Arizona, Trump's up by like 3 or 4. I think Nevada is a clear Trump state right now. Arizona, it's a little bit more swingy. It's going to be really close. I think Trump takes both of them out west, at least at this point. Now, this can all change, but this is just based off of the recent polling data. That puts Trump up to 236, Biden's at 218. You've got the Rust Belt states. You've got North Carolina and Georgia. So North Carolina, I'm going to give to Trump again. It's a combination of factors. Number one, Trump won North Carolina both in 2016 and 2020. It was a small margin, but he did win the state both of those times. And also, with how bad Biden's approval rating is, there's no way I can have him flip a state, if this is a rematch, with his approval rating being so horrible. Georgia, we've seen some big polls out of Georgia. And, Georgia is a Republican state. And what I mean is, when you talk about the ballot harvesting and the inner city vote, that's really the only reason that the Democrats they won it based off of like 3 counties, Fulton, DeKalb, and a few other ones in the major cities. Georgia in general is very conservative. And in the polls that we've seen out of Georgia, you could say it's very light red right now, but certainly I would think Trump would win Georgia. He's up by like 9 or 10. I know they're very early polls, but in general, I was shocked that he lost in 2020. I was joking going into 2020, thinking it's ridiculous. It's not a swing state in Georgia. Evidently it was. Moving on. New Hampshire, I do think Biden will take New Hampshire. It seems slightly more liberal to me. New Hampshire, that state. Maine, you do have the split here. I'm going to give Biden, I'll give Biden 2 of them, and then I'll give Trump the other 2. I really, I don't really want to worry about that right now, but, that's a small amount. You can see Trump already at 270, Biden's at 224. And then these 3 states, normally what I do, at least right now, these are all just so close. There's been some recent polls in Wisconsin. It was a tie. Normally, I always give Trump Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and they're all extremely close. Yeah, these got to be really close. And then I give Biden Michigan, just because I think Michigan's a little bit more liberal. But yeah, this is a full color-coded map. It's kind of annoying when it color codes because you can barely tell that that's red and red right there. But this would put Trump. Is there one state? Oh, no, I thought there was one state left. This would put Trump at 299, Biden at 239. So Trump on the doorstep of 300. I do think at this point in time, this is relatively accurate. Do I think any of these other candidates are going to get any electoral votes? It's just not going to happen based on, the winner-take-all system that we have when it comes to the presidency. And in terms of this election, the states that are really going to decide it, Republicans have to take back Georgia. It's so important that they take back Georgia. It makes the Rust Belt so much easier. You can lose another one of these Rust Belt states. You've already taken Ohio. You control that now. All you would have to do if you take back Georgia is get another one of these states, and then it's key out west. See, you can do something where, let's say Biden narrowly wins Pennsylvania. Trump is still at 280 in this situation. Biden narrowly wins Nevada, Trump's still at 274. So it's just very key that you take back Georgia. Georgia is something that that would break the Republicans back, in my opinion. I mean, technically, you can lose Georgia and still win the election, but I think like losing Georgia is just such a bearish sentiment when it comes to Trump's chances because, Georgia to me is a conservative state in general. I know the liberals flipped it in 2020, but just based off of, again, the thing that I would say, the one thing to look at is the approval rating, and I do think it will get slightly better. I don't know where it will go. I'm kind of angry they don't have a comparison to what Trump's approval rating was at this time. I know 538 had that. Normally, Real Clear Politics used to have it as well. But Trump's was at least 2 or 3 points better than where Biden's is right now. I do know that. Now, not that that really matters much because Trump had the pandemic. He had to shut the country down. Oh, they do have battleground states. And you can see this is early polling, but Trump is up in everything in Arizona, Nevada. It's even more. It's important to look at the dates. Yeah, there's only been 3 polls. I guess 2 dates are kind of recent. Trump +8, +2. Wisconsin, I believe there was a tie. Very close in Wisconsin. The swing states are so close. Wow. Michigan, maybe I'm underestimating Republicans in Michigan. A recent poll by Bloomberg, Trump +5, that poll came out about a week and a half ago. Pennsylvania, basically a tie, Biden 0.3. North Carolina, wow. I wouldn't. I mean, these polls are so long ago, but Georgia, yeah, there's been a few other. Fox News just had one, Trump +8, +8. These happening in January, +8. So Trump up well. Trump trending in a lot of the swing states. Some of these are 5-way. Oh, the 5-ways I think will actually have Trump up by even more. If you do 5 ways, it depends. It's very early polling data. I wouldn't take too much into it. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.